So this is my last segment of effects of the corona pandemic here. And that is that basically sports are now completely done. So there's no professional sports on TV. There's no high school sports. There's no local sports. Which I like sports. You like sports.
Yeah, it's a change.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I like watching the NBA playoffs. You like golf, right?
I like NBA and golf. March Madness.
Yeah, March Madness was something to watch, and Penn State was going to be in the tournament this year, but unfortunately that's not happening. And college football is going to come up, and are they going to play? I don't know. Is NFL going to play? But one good thing about this is now that there's no... on Sundays and in the evenings or whatever, there's no more distraction of, hey, Dad, can you teach me how to, fix a car or whatever? And he's like, no, son, the Lakers are on. I got to watch this. And now let me get on the internet and argue with this guy about whether Tom Brady should have stayed with the Patriots or how well he'll do in Tampa Bay. And are the Colts, how much better are they going to be with Phillip Rivers as quarterback? By the way, Rivers is a Catholic. And I think he might be a Latin Mass Catholic. I'm not entirely sure because he has 6 kids.
Well,
7 kids.
I think it's closer to 9 or 10 now.
Okay, so it's even bigger. It's even better. It's the best, believe me. And so Rivers is he's on our team. I hope there's a lot more NFL players like that. Well, I know there are some.
There are definitely several.
Yeah, I mean
some of the kickers.
TNT had on Harrison Butker and Greg Zerline, who are both, I guess I'd call them trad Catholics.
Yeah.
So
one just won the Super Bowl.
That's right. Yeah. No, congratulations to him. That's terrific. Restaurants, I mentioned this. Restaurants are closed, so it's takeout only, which means families have to eat dinner together, which is a very important thing for kids and adolescents and teenagers. Is now they can talk about topics in the news and in their life, and their parents can ask them questions and know what's going on. You have what I would call the usurious economy of the United States of America. The economy built upon usury is now pretty much crushed, and it's going to be set back quite a bit. Now, in the objective, the usury is bad, but I think unfortunately there'll be, people are going to lose jobs because of this, and that's not good. But I'm not so sure that there will be people starving. I don't think so. I don't think there'll be bread lines or people selling apples for 10 cents. It could happen, but if it does, may God grant that it's for the salvation of souls. But we need a better economic system, one where you don't have 2 sets of rules. You got a set of rules for the really rich, and then a set of rules for everybody else. Or the set of rules that says, you owe me all this money, and, because of this catastrophe or whatever, I'll be nice. You won't have to pay me the extra 30% in penalties and fees. I'll cut it from 30% to 29%. I'll give you a nice deal. So you've got people who have the ability to just rake you over the coals. And the bad guys, I think, are going to get hurt through all this thing. A lot of the bad dealers, the shady dealers, the shady bankers, because people are just going to say they're going to have to declare bankruptcy. And a lot of the lenders who are engaging in the usury are going to be up the river through this disaster. They'll be up the creek with no paddle, and it might hopefully lead to a better economic system after this catastrophe is over. And the last thing is the United States of America may, as a government, as a unified republic of 50 states, might collapse and break up over this whole thing. Why will that happen? Let's take a look at our state. So Pennsylvania, the governor closed everything, basically. Now everybody's out of work. So the first thing that's going to happen is after 2 weeks, they're all going to go to try to collect unemployment. Now, the state has a balanced budget amendment. There's only so much money to give to these people. And tax revenues have taken a big cut because every business is closed. But now you've got to pay all these people because the governor just fired all of them and said, you can't go to work. So where's the money going to come from? The state doesn't have the ability to coin money, so they're going to have to go hat in hand to Trump and the federal government, and they'll say, I know we hate your guts, and we've been campaigning everything we can do to make you look bad, but we've got so many people here that need money, and our state's going to go bankrupt, and so you better give us a bailout. Now, if Trump gives a pile of money to Pennsylvania, well then here comes California with hat in hand, and their Democrat governor, and he'll be holding out his hat, and they're like the biggest economy of all the states, and they're gonna go bankrupt too. So Trump's gonna have to like give all these bailouts to all these countries, and there's not infinite money. It's just not possible. You can't print all this money to do all these bailouts of the states. If you do, you're gonna have hyperinflation. And then you've got all these foreign investors like China is investing in our country and our treasury bonds, and eventually they're going to get wind and say, man, there's just nothing going on in America. It's dangerous. We're not going to buy any of your bonds. Your dollar's not going to be worth anything anymore. We'll have a realignment there. And if that happens in the country and the federal government starts to cut itself off, and you get rivalries that this state's getting this and I'm not, and I don't want to pay, why am I bankrupting myself to go pay for people in California? California's a decrepit state. They've got a terrible government. They have people crapping in the streets in San Francisco, homeless people and bums all over the place talking to themselves, eating trash out of dumpsters, and I got to go pay for that. So the good thing to come out of this would be, in my opinion, you would have a breakup of the United States into smaller segments, which would be more conducive to a government formed on the principle of subsidiarity, which is Catholic, where you have a government that's closer to the people and more responsive to the people and less overbearing and overarching, and that respects your rights, the rights of the family, etc., more, rather than crony professionals in Washington, D.C., who get their check every week from the special interests, and on it, with the check comes, okay, you're supposed to vote on this bill. Always make sure that the abortion is protected. That's what's on this big money check. It's like, keep that blood flowing. As Alex Jones says, these demons need their sacrifice. The God of Chuck Schumer, he requires that baby blood. It's like in the Aztec temples where they had that priest up there, and they're bringing up those captives, and he's just cutting out hearts one at a time, tossing these hearts into a pile, and then they throw the corpses as they roll down. You've got people in Washington, D.C., like the Chuck Schumers and the Nancy Pelosi's, who are almost like they're the high priests of this satanic human sacrifice religion. And they're up there, keep those dead babies coming. Keep those abortions coming. We got to have those abortions so that we have this demonic power to stay in power. And we could see the end of this whole thing. May God grant that there's no more abortions after this whole fiasco and collapse happens, because people will be realizing, maybe I shouldn't kill my children in this in this world. Maybe I should. There's been enough death. Maybe we need to bring forth life and let children have a nice childhood instead of snuffing them out in the womb. So there's many opportunities here, and don't let this seem like this is doom and gloom, because this is. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, the bishop canceled mass or whatever, and I say, man, think about all the good that's going to happen out of this. It's almost like I praise God, not because he shut down the masses, but because we're entering this new epoch. It's now a new opportunity that the United States of America, the church, and America, maybe even the whole world, will never be the same. This is bigger than 9/11, because in 9/11, okay, 2 buildings fell down, and a lot of people died. God have mercy on their souls, but everybody was back to work like within a week. And it wasn't like immediately we said, okay, that's it, we're going to war with Hussein or Bin Laden or whoever it was. And there was no real global realignment that happened there. But with this corona, with basically the governors declaring martial law, Trump's going to have to do all these bailouts, everybody's locked down, we're now in a Soviet police state where you can't go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of Maker's Mark or Jim Beam. You can't go to a soccer game or a basketball game. You can't go to Mass. That's locked down. People are scared of going to the grocery store. All this stuff. We're now living in the Soviet states of America. And all of a sudden it happened like that. So when people say, I used to think something like this could never happen in America. Then I woke up one morning and it was a whole new world where we're now in the Soviet states of America. So even it happened in the Catholic Church, So for instance, people say, John, the Latin Mass could never come back. It couldn't come back because it would be, there'd be, people would freak out if the Pope all of a sudden said, okay, we're getting rid of Novus Ordo.
Well, no one would understand it.
Yeah, they'd say we can't understand it or whatever. Well, all of a sudden, the span of from one day to the next, you now have no Mass and no sacraments. And did any of us ever think that would happen? I never did. But we woke up and one day it happened. I would never think that between one day and the next, the governor would basically shut down the whole state and fire a bunch of people effectively and run the economy into the tank. I never thought it would happen, but he did it. And so this is what I've learned is that you can experience this epochal shift, and in a lot of ways it's just like another day, but then you realize the world's going to be completely different. Birds are still going to chirp. I'm going to get up and eat my breakfast, and maybe I go to work, maybe I don't, but I'm going to say my prayers, but life will be different after this, and I don't know exactly how that'll be, but there's a lot of ways that we just went over.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Now, in closing, do you have any favorite YouTube channels where you like to watch the Mass?
Yeah. So even before this, the Corona thing happened, I had been scouting out different Latin Masses on YouTube to see, okay, what are they doing as far as high Masses, how's their choir, which rubrics are they doing, is there anybody doing pre-55 here, or are they still 62? So I don't really watch Novus Ordos, I can't comment on those.
Well, the Richard Heilman generally does the Novus Ordo, but
Okay.
it's a Reverend Novus
Yeah.
Ordo, so that's one way to get people to a little bit more towards the Latin Mass.
Yeah, and I think I saw Society of St. John Cantius. I was sent a clip on St. Joseph's that they had a Mass that was from their chapel in the canonry, and it was a Novus Ordo, and I believe it was in English, and it was ad orientem, and it was very beautiful, and so in this sense, some of these reverent Novus Ordos ad orientem can be like a gateway drug, so to speak, towards the Latin Mass. And I would encourage you, maybe you're not like totally on the Latin Mass train, but you got to understand that that's the tradition and that's the future of the church. So let these reverent Novus Ordos in English, or maybe English/Latin, let that be an introduction for you getting the whole way into the Latin Mass. So the answer that I would give for which Latin Masses that I'm watching on YouTube, I like, and I think I recommend it to you, the Institute of Christ the King in Limerick, Ireland.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot too.
They have a beautiful chapel, church, parish there. They have Mass every day. A lot of times it's a high Mass. I think on Sundays they have preaching, or if there happens to be a feast day, like on St. Patrick, they had preaching that day. But usually there's no preaching, so you can watch that since you can't go to real Mass in real life.
And the good thing is, no matter when if you're in the United States,
Yeah.
no matter when you wake up, they'll always have something posted because
Yeah.
their morning is a lot earlier than ours.
Yeah. I think they're six hours ahead of us.
Something like that. Yeah.
So there's one recommendation. Another one that I watch is on Sundays. There's a channel. It's the Society of St. Augustine, and I mentioned them before. And they're in like Kansas, and there's a priest who's a relatively well-known kind of Twitter priest who is the celebrant of that Latin Mass. And it's just a very small chapel, but he gives fiery sermons, which are quite good on Sundays, and they use the older pre-55 rubrics in that Mass, and that's kind of why I started to watch, was to see what they were doing rubrics-wise, and the Missal and that kind of thing. But I like that. I like their YouTubes. Another one that I would recommend is St. Gertrude the Great. I believe it's sgg.org. They have a really nice website, and they live stream every Mass there. So they have, now they're a Sedevacantist chapel, but don't let that dissuade you. I mean, they got sacraments, and they have a beautiful liturgy there, and you're just watching. You're watching for the spiritual benefits. And they have, the thing that's great about St. Gertrude's is they have a bishop there and several priests. So a lot of days they have 2 masses every day, and sometimes it's a solemn high mass or a pontifical mass on an ordinary day. And so I tuned in. I was like, I wonder what they did yesterday for St. Benedict. So I watched, and they had, now somebody had died there. God have mercy on them. So they had a pontifical requiem mass for with the corpse, the body there present, and it was beautiful. And I've watched other days, like I don't know if it was St. Joseph or St. Patrick, I think it was, and they had a solemn high mass. So it's beautiful to go there during the week, go to their website, turn on the Mass, and you see, oh, there's a solemn high Mass, with these beautiful voices singing, and there might be a sermon. Though usually during the week there's not sermons, but on Sundays there'll be sermons, or Bishop Dolan will post a sermon. So that's another one that I will tune into and watch. And maybe something else will pop up. Maybe it'll be a Society of St. Pius X that'll pop up. But really, it's for me. I'll watch one Mass, maybe 2 on a Sunday, and after that, I'm just looking for sermons. And so I won't necessarily, if it's a Mass, I'll just fast forward it to the sermon. Or I'll see there's something that popped up on a Sensus Fidelium, and I'll watch that sermon on Sensus Fidelium. But those are the ones I recommend, and there's others like livemass.net and Holy Faith Media that are streaming all these different, you got Byzantines and various Eastern rites and Novus Ordos and Latin Masses. It's all there.
All right, well, thank you so much, Ryan. Everyone stay safe, and hopefully these suggestions that we've given you, at least for the YouTube channels, will keep you busy for a while.
Yeah.
And we'd like to hear your opinions, so if you have any comments on the future of the Novus Ordo, please comment down below.
Yeah, maybe there was something you were like, hey, you didn't think about this point, or I object to this point because of, X, Y, Z or whatever, and that's good. And remember, I've never said that everybody in Novus Ordo is bad. There's a lot of holy people who are in the Novus Ordo who are suffering, just like Latin Mass people are, who go to like diocesan-run parishes. We're suffering because our bishop has put us all under interdict, and there's a lot of holy people who go to the English Novus Ordo every day and on Sundays, and they're very faithful, and they're in tears, and so those are good people. There's good people in the Novus Ordo, and like I would, to quote Bill Clinton, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I know what it's terrible, and so continue to pray. Offer this pain and this loss up. But when I speak about the Novus Ordo, I talk about the new order. That's what Novus Ordo means. It's the new order of the church. You have a new religion, a new Mass, and these are the bad guys who were part-time Catholics, not really, when the going gets tough, they hide. The dollar comes first, the faith comes second, clapping from the crowds, tables at banquets with Obama, and greetings in the marketplaces. Hail, Rabbi! That's what these guys are all about. And let that thing collapse. That's what I talk about, the Novus Ordo establishment regime. Let that thing die, and just give us the Catholic Church, the same one that existed from the time of the apostles up until Vatican II, and this new order, new religion was formed. Get that imposter religion, that imposter church, get it out of here, and give us the Catholic faith of the saints and the apostles, and the one that is the pillar and foundation of all truth. That's what we need to return to, is the Catholic Church.